Okay, I'm gonna try again. Can y'all hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay.
We can hear you, Ramon.
Okay. Okay. So we're gonna sit for a few minutes and tune into the water in our bodies and listen for the subtleties in the natural world. And then around 7, the astrology gang is gonna begin our chart interpretations. Then about 5-10 minutes before 7:42, we're gonna sit again and listen for that exact moment of conjunction. Okay. So I'm actually going to try to jump off and get on a new link or a new portal for Zoom. And let's just sit until around 7, and then we can start again. And hopefully my connection will be better.
Noticing the expansion and contraction introduced to your body by your breath. Noticing the boundaries of your skin. The border that makes us distinct from our environments. Really feeling into that edge. Coming back to the heavy liquid nature of our flesh, our physicality. Feeling yourself connected to your seat, or if you're lying in bed, noticing all the places in your body that are touching support. As you're ready, if your eyes are closed, I'm going to invite you to open your eyes. Start to take in the light, or maybe the shade in the room around you. Notice what you hear in your room and beyond your room. Yeah, and if a little bit of movement helps, grasping your hands or your feet. And we'll have an opportunity to return to this place of stillness before the end of this session. We're going to transition into being in connection with one another. So maybe taking a moment and just seeing the faces on the screen here, or the images that people have left in lieu of their actual faces. No need to come on if you don't want to, it's early. But just seeing each other. Okay, folks, and you can feel free to chat where you are coming from on planet Earth right now. If you know the, indigenous peoples that live or lived in the lands where you're living, put that into the chat too. I'm calling from Boulder, Colorado. And these are the historical lands of the Arapaho, the Cheyenne, the Ute. And then we learned yesterday something like 41 other peoples. All right, Maya. Belize, all right, Belize in the house. Mexico City in the house, in the space. Okay. Springfield, beautiful, y'all. Okay. So this call is an intersection between embodied astrology and Dreaming for Our Lives, which is an event that's being sponsored and hosted out of Naropa University. And we've been riding with one another for 3 days. This is the fourth and final day for a lot of beautiful poetry, a lot of art, a lot of ceremony, a lot of healing work, a lot of tangible information about our relationship to water. And we've woven astrology through the whole thing. And today we want to actually do some legit astrology and give several folks online, Renee, Kadie, Monticue, Connelly, myself, some time to look at the chart of this moment and share and explore together what the configuration of energy around this conjunction and how we might employ it and bring it into our lives and catch that energy and share, distribute it. So I don't know if you all, astrology gang, if y'all have a sense of what order we should do it in. I'm happy to jump in first. Was thinking that each one of us could have up to 15 minutes to share an initial interpretation, and then we would open it up to more of a conversational thing with the four of us and the rest of the folks online. Also, I think that maybe 5 minutes before that actual conjunction, we could just pause again and come back into that space of stillness. And I also want to just kind of put out there that it's kind of typical Neptune that there's some confusion about when exactly it's happening. So I think maybe we're just going to say that it's 7:43 Mountain Time. And around that time, we will come back into stillness. And if one of us is doing our interpretation, we'll pause it. Okay. Yeah, Renee, if you would like to share the chart. Should I start? Okay. Yeah. Okay, so I think part of how I'd like to start is just by giving some kind of context and background. And one of the ways that I'm kind of holding this chart and this conjunction, and one of my interests astrologically, is the cycling of the outer planets. And how the outer planets basically can show us things that are happening on a collective level, more so, I think, than our individual selves and the way that we're navigating energies. And so I think one place to start, if we're looking at the outer planets, actually is Pluto. And because Pluto, in a way, it almost appears to be stationary. It moves so slow compared to much of the rest of the chart that it almost acts as a stationary point and sort of a reference point. And so Pluto, since 2008, we all know, has been in the sign of Capricorn. And Capricorn, one of the meanings or kind of qualities attributed to Capricorn is that it rules large scale institutions, banking, finance, governance, and kind of your standard patriarchal figures, right? That sort of attitude of ownership and control in a broad way. And we've seen that Pluto has really shaken the foundations of a lot of those patriarchal institutions. And, we saw that with the financial collapse in the United States, the housing bubble in 2008. And since that time, I think we've seen continual sort of like challenges to the basic institutions of not only the United States, but a lot of like the modern world or the industrial world or the colonized world. Another, I think, powerful challenge to that came with the Uranus-Pluto square, from approximately 2011 to 2016. And Uranus sort of brought in that energy. Uranus and Aries brought in that energy of a lot of spontaneous, like revolutionary movements, radical movements, resistance movements that were really trying to push up against this, the establishment, and I think we saw that just a whole spectrum of those. And so I think another major and important piece with Pluto is that Pluto has just recently passed over its origin point in the United States' birth chart. Okay, I believe it was 27 degrees Capricorn. That's the position of Pluto when the United States was founded as a political entity. And I make a differentiation between the United States, America, and Turtle Island, by the way. And so the United States has, as part of its founding, if you think about Pluto and Capricorn again, and Pluto and some of its more problematic manifestations, it's partly about how we seek to control things and how we seek to kind of grasp from a sort of secret way the strings of our relationships and control and puppet, right? And I think it comes in part from the fact that Pluto shows us ultimately that we actually don't have control, and that things are going to change, things are going to fall apart, and they're going to come together in ways that we don't expect. And so ultimately what Pluto can teach us is how to release, and how to really align where power is going instead of trying to make it do what we want it to do. And so the United States has this fundamental desire to control on a large scale level. And we see that through, our expression of empire, enslavement, colonization, displacement of peoples, not only on our own lands, but all over the earth. And our really kind of deep addiction to a lot of resources. So we just passed over that point, okay? And when we look at the conjunction of Jupiter and Neptune, a couple of things, okay? This conjunction happens every 13 years, and it happens sequentially through every sign. I think it might be the only outer and interplanetary conjunction that happens sequentially like that. The rest of them skip around. The last time it took place in Aquarius, right, 13 years ago in 2009, but the last time it was in Pisces was 166 years ago. Okay, and 166 years ago, it's about 1856, and that was right before the start of the American Civil War. Okay, in 1856, there was this dispute that went on in Kansas. And this dispute was basically, the substance of it was, will Kansas be a state that allows enslavement or not? Okay, and John Brown and his group of abolitionists were set that it was not going to be. And they were also set, and there was a big split in the state. There was even a split between, they created two different governments in the state, a slave government and a free government. And John Brown and his folks got to the point where they were like, we cannot decide this through politics anymore. And that it had to come to like violence. And so those struggles in Kansas kicked off the actual like combat of the American Civil War, and that those struggles eventuated in the Civil War a couple of years later. Okay. And of course, all of that westward expansion of the United States was happening, you know, moving into and kind of stealing land and territory from indigenous peoples. So I think if we look at the last time that Jupiter and Neptune conjuncted in Pisces, we actually get a view of that kind of original woundedness, destructiveness, that covert desire for empire that is part of the makeup of the United States. Also, this particular conjunction, Jupiter and Neptune, okay, both Jupiter and Neptune are either ruled by or co-ruled by Pisces. Okay, they're strongest in Pisces, or pretty close to it. So this is another figuring I have. If this conjunction of Jupiter and Neptune is going to be potent at any point, it's when it's happening in Pisces. If its effects are going to broadcast at any point, it's going to be Pisces. And Pisces is also the ending of the zodiac. So this is, I think, is the reset of that entire cycle of conjunctions, not only the conjunction that happens every 13 years sequentially through the signs, but through the entire cycle of 166 years. And so we are ending that entire cycle of relationship here. Now, what time am I at? Okay. So part of what this cycle, I think, has to teach us, this conjunction rather, has to teach us, and actually the greater cycle in general, is Jupiter comes after Mars. And in Mars, everybody's looking out for themselves. Everybody's trying to get theirs. Everybody's trying to exercise the power and energy that they have to do what they desire. When you reach Jupiter, you have to find a way to bring together people's various desires and come up with something that as a group, people can work with and accept. Right? So one of the powers of Jupiter is the ability to create a consensus. It's the ability to create a shared system or even a feeling of belief. Right? Jupiter rules our kind of mundane relationship to religion, our mundane relationship to community, and our sense of where we are going together. So our sense of future. And I would say future in its mundane sense. I think that Neptune and Uranus actually get us into future in its sort of transpersonal, expansive, the future we don't expect. Whereas Jupiter is the future that we expect. So every time these two planets come together, you've got Neptune, and Neptune is the receptacle of our dreams as a species. Okay, it's the place where there are things that are hidden in the belly of humanity. There are possibilities, there are potentials. There are things that we've exiled. And every time those two planets come together, a lot of those exiled possibilities can come back into play in our consensus reality, our consensus consciousness. So we have that opportunity every 13 years to expand our sense of community and expand our sense of belief and dissolve whatever boundaries and whatever sense of exclusivity, because I think that's another factor that can happen with Jupiter. Jupiter can be inclusive, but then Jupiter says, well, this is my religion and that's yours, and I don't mess with you. Okay, and Neptune can dissolve that, and we can expand our sense of who is part of we. Okay, now if we go back to that original woundedness, destructiveness of the United States as symbolized by its Pluto position, and we go back to the fact that the last time these two planets conjuncted in Pisces was the Civil War, which was really the first struggle in US history where we're really actually willing to take a look at the shadow of this society. We're in that place again. And if we look at the world around us, you can see the Pluto return of the United States playing out. I mean, it's ridiculous. Okay. Now, there's different charts, but in some of the charts I've been looking at, the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction sextiles the Pluto position. And it sextiles even more exactly the point, the 27th degree, where the United States' birth Pluto is at. And so I think at this time, what we have is this opportunity to use those qualities of Jupiter and Neptune, that dissolving and expanding sense of community, that reclaiming of exiled imaginations, right? That ability that Neptunian and Piscean ability to dive into like the things, the trauma that we experience, not just in our own bodies, but intergenerationally in mass. Okay, I was listening to Joy DeGruy, who wrote, or kind of coined the phrase post-traumatic slavery syndrome. And one of the things she said is, after the Civil War, after Reconstruction, after Jim Crow, did Black people was there ever any therapy done? Now, I think if we look at the Black church, or if we look at music, blues, jazz, so on, I think we can say in part, yes, there was. But as a nation, as a society of peoples from different places, some peoples who were born here and whose ancestors are long dwellers here, some people who were dragged here, some people who ran here, have we ever done collective therapy on the fact that we set up this color-based hierarchy and we displace people from land, and that we exploit people all over the planet, and then we deny it, and then we put up this false Neptunian illusion of the American dream? I think we can say that we haven't. We haven't turned to that kind of healing work on a collective level. And so what that sextile shows us is that we actually have an opportunity to turn those healing powers and those expansive powers and those new capacities to imagine and embody new imaginations in community towards that original place of woundedness. So there's a lot more in the chart, but just to try to set some frames and some possibilities, that's my first round. Who's next?
I'll jump in. Can you hear me?
Yep, we'll set a timer for you for 15 if you ain't.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, that's good. Peace and blessings to everybody. Thank you for being here on this holiday. I kind of joke around and say we'll all reincarnate in another 166 years, and we'll do this again in whatever form that looks like. I like what Ramon said about the Pisces as being the receptacle of dreams. And I think one thing that's very practical is having containers for the water. All right, so really going deep into what are the containers that I have that are going to carry what I have into the next chapter, because there's a lot of wasted energy you know, if there's not a container, you know, and a conscious movement of where do I want this energy to go? Like, what traditions do you want to pass on? You know, what collectives can you form if there's not a tradition already set, you know, that can carry your medicine forward, looking way beyond our immediate needs, but into what Ramon was talking about was this collective self. You know, how do we get rid of these false boundaries between us and realize that, yo, like, we are really one. And maybe not in the sense of all just being a big jelly ball, but we're definitely a salad, you know, with more commonalities than we think. Some of the things that rang out for me in the chart first was this extremely positive aspect to Scorpio, you know, and it going straight from the conjunction to Scorpio. And it made me think of the divine shadow and how we also, I feel like in this new era, should look at the shadow in a positive light. And what I mean by that is a lot of people use the shadow work. It's like, oh, I need to work on my shame, you know, on my guilt, on these parts I don't want people to see. But also going into that shadow, the shadowy realm to say, wait, what have I misperceived as something to be shameful for? What are the gifts in the darkness? What are the gifts in the treasure? What have I been downplaying in another society as dark? You know, like looking into some of that. For example, you know, Hollywood, for example, and Hollywood has been really coming at African spirituality for a long time in a negative way. You know, and it's, oh, the dark continent, these dark people with these dark practices. And I feel like Scorpio is inviting us in this period to say, no, there's beauty in the dark. There's a divine dark, you know, and just as much as we need our light workers, we need these dark workers, these people that work with the element of dark in a positive way, like the night sky, the gestation of the womb. And I'm also thinking of like how the secrecy of Scorpio is so important. And so as we look at Jupiter and Neptune and these dreams bubbling up inside of us, also respecting secret and not exposing things before they're ready to be born is going to be huge, you know, because we're in a very, like Ramon was talking about, you know, there's a lot of warring of ideas and things going on right now. So people are trying to shoot the subtle down before it could really manifest. That's stupid. You know, you should have kept that away, blah, blah, blah. But also, I know that Scorpio highly is in conjunction and in relation to the genital region and sex, the places we usually keep hidden. You know, even people that don't wear a lot of clothes will still have that area hidden, you know, like, wow, you live in the forest and you still got a little leaf over that or a little cloud, you know, it's that hidden energy, you know, it's so powerful. It's the blessed secret. And what it told me also in accordance with this Neptune energy is how important sex magic is going to be, how important cultivating sexual energy is going to be during this next phase. You know, how breaking the chains of how pornography has taught us to engage in sex, but also taking it to deeper religious levels, deeper spiritual levels, okay? And letting it expand with that Jupiterian energy throughout the body, along with the mystic nature of the Neptune, and let it talk to you. Like, look at your sex as a spirit, you know, the sex that you're having with someone as a spirit, and talk to it. You know, the same way we might talk to our bodies during an illness, or just to tap into different things like we did last night. You know, what is our sex saying? What is the message in our sex? You know, getting into Monticue and the Taoist cultivation of sexuality and moving the sex up. Jupiter moves up, you know, moving it up and into the dream space and dreaming and imagining what the sex could be on a deeper level. And also Scorpio deals a lot with the removal of toxins. Okay, you know, as Scorpio corresponds to the anus, and also all these spaces where we're getting rid of. Whereas Taurus, you know, which is on the opposite side, deals with nourishment and putting in the nutrients. Scorpio's like, what do you need to get rid of? Okay, what waste is there? Removal of waste, Drinking a ton of water is going to be very important during this phase. We're dealing with Pisces here. So removal of water, you can have every tincture, you can have every mineral supplement, you could meditate, but if you're not drinking the water, there's no transportation. And so I love to think of Pisces as moving us like a river. You know, we often think of Mercury as the main transportational guy, but Pisces is a transporter too. You know, Pisces rules the feet, you know, and it's the main method of transportation for all our nutrients. So now we're getting into our medical astrology, okay, where Pisces corresponds to the lymphatic system, okay, which is one of our inner oceans, our inner seas, the lymphatic system, which is another big removal of waste, all right? But Jupiter, the essence of Jupiter can be very clogging in the body, you know, as it talks about our excesses, you know, and cholesterol and eating these heavy diets and things like that. What else am I eating? What else am I eating? All right. And then also Neptune in the medical astrology in its negative light can be represented as toxins and poisons. Okay, so what are the toxins and poisons and things that could be clogging up the bloodstream, clogging up the waters in the body that need to be released through the Scorpio energy, which lets go? There's a huge letting go energy going on right now with Pisces and Scorpio. And I think also getting into some of the psychological pieces is just knowing that Pisces, once again, and Neptune, we're dealing with illusions. So also being able to recognize what is me and what isn't. And then how can I still use what is not me to manifest in certain zones? It's almost like, which suit do I wear without losing my core? Which mask can I wear? How do I be the trickster? How do I manifest as the trickster and not have everybody have access to my innermost treasures? They have to work for that. They got to work through the masks. They got to work through the tricks, you know, but knowing how to use the illusion, how to pop this up. And if you're not going to be, and if you're going to be in your core, if you're going to be in your full manifestation of your treasure, making sure you're at least in the presence of your community and your protectors. So protecting that treasure so that people aren't just eating at you till you have nothing left. Because attention is eating, you know? And this is the age of the quiet guy, the quiet gal, being able to be heard. Look at these TikToks, look at these social medias. It's no more of these alpha personalities running the groups, you know, no more of these alpha personalities, you know, like, oh, I'm the most machoist person here, so everyone's gonna listen to me and I have the most wisdom. It's like, no, somebody in a quiet bedroom somewhere can get on the phone and say, this is my secret. This is what everybody should know. And press play. Bam, Jupiter sends it out. Neptune sends it out. Everybody's on TV right now. Stuff that was lost because of the machoism and the patriarchy. Oh, you only whoever's toughest, you know, listen to me. That stuff is dissolving. If you have a message, this is the time to get it out. If there's something that's deep that you think no one can hear, oh, they can hear it now. They can hear it now if you can tap in to your confidence. All right. And so back to the detoxing thing, since we're detoxing the blood, detoxing the waters of the system, we're going to want those circulatory stimulants in the body. Okay, so we're going to be on our cinnamons, you know, we're going to be on our cayennes, you know, we might be on some alternatives such as burdock, these herbs known as blood cleansers, because we're gonna cleanse out the stagnation. And also, I can't stress enough the importance of stretching and yoga during this phase. I like someone just commented, death of TV. That's right. It's no more this elitist, like, oh, you got to get a deal with NBC. You know, those structures are dissolving, you know. I also recognize that the moon, which is highly associated with Pisces, you know, is I believe, is it squaring? Yeah, I think it's squaring the conjunction and in Gemini. And so just being aware that opinions of others, chatty communication, you know, ideas, don't have the negative self-talk. Okay. Because as the moon moves into the moon's in Leo right now. So as we take in, sorry, so since the moon's in Leo, really taking this energy into the heart. That was my point. Really taking the energy. There is a negative aspect though, definitely coming from Gemini to the conjunction. But Leo, the moon is in Leo right now. So really during this day, taking the energy into the heart, because Leo corresponds to the heart. All right. But because the energy of this conjunction is not going to just fade out right away. This is going to ripple over the next couple of days. So as the moon moves through Leo today, take it into the body tomorrow as the moon goes into Virgo. Say, okay, how can I take this into my body? I would say tomorrow would be a really great day to start on the teas. If you're going to fast, whatever you're going to do to represent that moving of the fluids out. Okay, the moving of the fluids out, the sweating. All right. So really being in tune with that moon, because this full moon is really going to be powerful as the moon's going to magnify, the forces present here. And I'm going to pause because I guess it's almost 7:41. So just so people can settle in, I guess that'll be the end of me for now. But I just wanted to really stress the importance of the sex and the dark and the movement of toxins out of the blood in my talk. So thank you.
Right on, Monticue. Thank you. So we're just gonna take a moment, y'all, to once again, just from now to 7:43, just kind of return back into stillness, let the words of Monticue settle, tune into our liquid bodies again, and maybe into that heart space. Moon Leo. Just listen. Really feeling into that liquid breath. Breath coming and going like tide. Out breath reaching out to everything. In breath bringing signals and nourishment from everything. Even as we transition from this Neptunian Jupiter space of wide, vast spaciousness, back more into that Mercury thinking space. Stay connected to that sense of vastness, that sensation of vastness. So as you're ready, next astrologer in the cipher, feel free.
Uh, I want to take a moment to feel into gratitude. Thank you for being here. That gratitude extends to all beings. Thank you for being here. The gratitude extends inside into the heart. A message to the dream of self. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much, Ramon and Monticue, for your words and for bringing us into this space. Really resonate a lot with so much of what you both offered. When I tune in with the chart, I'm noticing the planetary positions. So I'm noticing that as we began our call, Pluto was on the midheaven, and it was the first being, it was the first entity that Ramon called in. And he talked about the symbolism of Pluto and the violence of colonial legacies. And he talked about the ways that structures have been built upon methods of extraction and removal, hierarchical power. And Monticue brought in this aspect between the Neptune-Jupiter conjunction and the trine to the south node, which is also a sextile with Pluto and with the midheaven right now. And Monticue talked about, again, legacies of extraction, and particularly the worldview and the mindset of fundamentalist European religious colonization and extraction of darkness. The dark continent Monticue brought in, and the illusion or delusion of pigmentocracy. Monticue asked us to orient towards divine shadow. And at the beginning of the call, Jules mentioned the age of Pisces moving out. So I think I want to start there and hold this Piscean age that we are finishing in some way, that we are in the final moments of, and there are different ideas about the planetary or the zodiacal ages. But the age of Pisces corresponds with the one God religions, and particularly the rise of Christian hegemony as a colonizing force around the world. This force is what allowed European colonizers, or what they claimed allowed them to steal bodies, to extract wealth, to differentiate based on pigment and culture and custom between human and non-human. Between heathen and godly. And this worldview of a supreme power that lives beyond the earth, up in the sky, out of our bodies. This worldview that teaches us that our bodies are evil, that our desires are to be mistrusted. Monticue called us into relationship with sacred eroticism. And I want to honor that the colonizing forces of religion and many other fundamentalist worldviews will use distraction and disassociation of the body and demonization of the body's desires as a first course of control. And when you shut people down to their own erotic embodied intelligence, people become easier to control. When we are not tuned in with pleasure, when we are not tuned in with our body's wisdom, we are tuned out. We're fragmented, we're fearful. We are ashamed. Taurus is rising as we begin our call, and Uranus in Taurus is an awakening symbol, awakening of the bodily intelligence. And though this movement did certainly not start with the entry of Uranus in Taurus, since this transit has begun, there has been such a revolution in the somatic fields. And the word embodiment is almost ubiquitous now. This desire to cultivate embodied awareness and embodied intelligence is one way I think that we can move towards remembering, itself a word to remember, to come back to the body, to bring our limbs and our pieces back so that we are not fragmented, that we remember our wholeness. This remembering is one pathway to the continuity and cohesion and the oneness that Monticue spoke of, this Piscean oneness. And he asked into the container for the oneness, because in our individuated bodies, of course, there is so much distance, there is so much difference and so much fragmentation. Between our individuated cells on this planet, there is so much strife. I don't know where the root of this dis-ease is within our human spirit. I know that the individuals and the organizations that colonized and sought to incorporate nations have their own legacies, that there was extraction and wipeout and erasure on the European continent, that before the nations that we know exist now, there was still misogyny and gender-based and sex-based violence. So I want to ask into this conjunction, this Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, in both its symbolism to delusion and illusion, the mindsets that convince us somehow of supremacy, which itself is founded upon difference and disassociation, the idea that somehow we are not connected, that our actions and impact upon one another won't come right back to us in the form of soul death and toxins, pollution, destruction that we will reap upon our bodies as we reap upon each other. I want to feel into the sensitivity of this conjunction, the co-presence, the triple occupation of the two rulers of Pisces, Jupiter and Neptune, with Venus exalted here. Venus, the ruler of Taurus, the ruler of the ascendant, dispositor of Uranus now and Mercury and the North Node. To me, this co-presence feels like the longing, the deep longing that I think all of us feel in our bodies and in our relationships to be known and seen and held in our wholeness. To come back to the complete sense of oneness that we may have experienced pre-birth, that we may experience in moments of expansion and perhaps transcendence of the physical form, that we may experience in moments of spiritual and divine communication and connection. And again, I want to call in the aspects to the nodal axis, the trine to the south node, the sextile to the north node. I really love the invitation that Monticue gave to tune in with the sacred shadow. In some traditions, the south node is called dragon's tail or Ketu. And this is an origin point as well as an ending and release point. That the south node is a symbol of where we have come from. And in this symbol, we are invited to observe that history repeats itself, that where we come from will continue to embody and enact through our lived experiences and relationships and ideas unless we examine it. And through examination of the south node, we can call upon the gifts that we have inherited, the opportunities that we have emerged within. We can call upon the momentum of history and the past. And in the language of the quantum futurists, we can feel into and sense into retrocausality, the engagement with the past as present, as we recognize that historical forces still move within us with velocity, with magnitude, but that in our lives, we are vessels of transformation. We are vessels of consciousness. And this is an opportunity of embodied experience that somehow, some way, each of our spirits and our souls, however you want to conceive of them, the Ori or the Purusha or the light that lives within each of our beings has chosen to come into these embodiments, these incarnations and flesh vessels for a very brief moment in time. And in this phenomenal material reality that we call Earth, we can move and change and shape. We have agency. We have creative power. We work through the dense layers of material reality, of earthly reality. We touch each other's bodies. We work with land. We gather. We move force through our bodies. And the North Node in Taurus, co-present with Uranus now as a generational cycle, invites us into embodied awakening. We are not only bystanders. We are not only here to witness and be overwhelmed. Like Octavia said, we shape change. Change shapes us and we shape change, and God is change. Uranus and Taurus in wide sextile to the conjunction is a portal. I feel that it is an invitation and a request to open through our effervescence, our spiritual bodies, our subtle bodies, our psychic organs, our intuitions, our sensitivity and love for one another and for ourselves, our remembering of self as whole. I feel that this is a request and an invitation to embody our divine natures and to feel into ourselves as beings who shape change. And this triple presence, Venus, Neptune, Pisces, Jupiter, asking us to remember love. Venus is in its morning star phase. Traditionally, this phase has been associated with Venus as a goddess of war. We started our call this morning on Mars's day, Tuesday, and the hour of Mars. We'll finish our call in the sun's hour. These solar active principles invite us into action. And love sometimes is a battle. And right now on this planet, love is a battle. And the battle is between these historic forces that seek to occupy and distract and distance and separate, that ignite conflict. And the forces inherent in our planet and inherent in our bodies that are forces of unity, coherence, and cohesion. Every cell in our bodies is alive. The most subtle sensory influence changes the entire body state. How can we embody the archetypes of warriors of love? And what does this mean? What does it mean to pick up this sacred duty? To move beyond the bypassing tendencies that are both social, cultural, religious, and historic, that paint love as some kind of platitude and nicety or politeness. How do we move into love as a frequency that is attuned, that is deeply relational and that is uncompromisingly committed to self-reflection, to this work that Monticue talked of, which is the sacred shadow work, that we might investigate within ourselves where we are blocked from love, where we have been convinced by forces that are older and bigger than our individuated selves, that are individual selves, where we have been convinced that somehow we in ourselves are not divine, that somehow we in our connections, in our community, in our relationships to one another's bodies and the land and all beings, that these connections are not divine. So I invite us as we move into this day, that it's not only the day that Jupiter and Neptune conjoin, but it's also the day that the sun moves into sextile with Saturn. The Aries sun, the illumination of self, Saturn in Aquarius, the hard work and the rigor of moving up and out into the big picture and doing the work, performing the labor to find unity in some way, unison. We don't need to be the same, but we can move together. I want to invite us on this day to meditate in deep inner awareness and sensitivity to the subtle frequencies and vibrations, the very subtle orientations that might turn us away from love, where we retract, where we repel, where we shut down in fear, where we dismiss in judgment. I want to invite us to tune in with our bodies and our heart frequencies, the connections between us and the connections around us.
Eggs.
Thank you.
Been thinking about this transit for a long time. And I remember listening to people talk about all the associations. I just remember sitting in the car being like, this feels like grief. This feels like really deep grief. I'm thinking of songs like Willow Weep for Me and Sympathy. I'm thinking of like Free Place by the Water, which is an old hymn that we sing in songs. I'm thinking that I see Michelle on the call, and I'm thinking about the blessing of grief. And I'm thinking about what it means to embody grief. I just want to acknowledge that this transit can feel really unsettling, because it is for me. These systems are big, and they have created narratives that are, sometimes they seem too deep. Like it's a weed that you just keep pulling and pulling and pulling. While also acknowledging, these systems have given me such special gifts, like the gift of song. I don't always know what someone else doesn't, that's enough. Um, Thinking about the fact that we are a few days outside of we're approaching a full moon, which is a light in the dark. It can be really difficult to see in the dark or to embody a light that is best seen in the dark when you don't have a good echo. And so I'm thinking about that. Just keep it a buck. I'm thinking about Tam and what it really means to walk in knowing that I have lost and that I am losing. What that feels like. You know, Michelle said yesterday, nothing is going to waste. And Ramon brought up the 2011 to 2016 period, which correlates to, I think, a square with Pluto. The Uranus Pluto square. Saw a lot of life transition through those years. I went back and I looked and I saw how many public deaths we as a collective witnessed in the streets. And I don't know if I genuinely believe that there is a therapy that rectifies that grief. I can hold it. And I think, or in this moment, I'm wondering if this transit, you know, is a container to say, wow, oh, I've lost. I've really lost. And these are the ways now that I must embody that loss. Because if I continue not thinking about that loss, then somehow it might be wasted. And so I enter spaces like erotic embodiment, coming from a place of I need support. I need someone to hold my hand because I am actively losing. And if we are here in this frequency, I believe that, you know, we're here to do something. And so, how can we, you know, open our arms and our hearts and tell us stories, but also receive new stories that give way to the embodiment that we desire? How do we sit at the edge of the basket and feel this? Because we know that that's just a part of that's a part of the future. That is a part of walking into. I can't see all y'all, but I just want to affirm the weight of loss, and I want to affirm the practices that I know that have helped me get through loss, like do the work, like beautifully, like singing, like storytelling. And I also want to affirm that those practices do not negate the real weight of loss. And I hope that something I say or something we say as astrologers in this moment helps you to know that you're just not alone in that loss. Because for me, when I look at this moment, yeah, I feel really deep loss.
Thank you, Kadie, for really bringing the water. Thank you, Renee, for really bringing the precision and invoking the love. So at this point, we're going to open it up. If there are comments or insights that you all have that you want to put in the chat or voice, feel free. And also, we're on for the next 15 minutes, but we are dealing with liquid polychronic Black people time. So it might go on a little bit longer than the 8:30 mark. If folks need to go, y'all can do what you need to do. But at this point, we want to open it up for some more conversation, not only between Astrology Gang, but between us as a whole. So, and I want to recognize too, Monticue, that I cut your time off a little bit. So maybe I want to open to you first. If there's anything that's coming through you that you want to share, yeah, we start there.
I just want to thank everyone that's here. I can feel that the energy here is just so positive and welcoming, and that people aren't only listening with their brains, but they're listening with their hearts, you know, and listening with all their subtle planes. And actually, I could feel that. I felt that. I definitely felt the conjunction happen. I felt a switch. You know, I don't know if everybody else did, but I felt like a slight crossover, like around, was it 7:41? You said that it was happening. I felt it around 7:42. And I really feel like we've crossed over into this period where the collective subconscious is going to be so important. Moving in accordance with unspoken codes, you know, is going to be really, really important. And really also recognizing that Neptune also governs horses and earthquakes. So just also kind of being on the lookout, like what is the earthquake trying to shake up? What is Neptune dissolving? You know, and when you see horses in your dreams and then speaking to you and inspiring you, what does that call out? You know, what does that call out for you? But I feel like when Renee went on that whole like journey, like Renee, you really went deep and like just really spoke from a channeled place. And I just felt like you were hitting on stuff so it's cool how divine timing works, because even though I was cut off, Renee started going into other things that I was like, okay, I don't have to say that. I don't have to say that, you know, because you're just so tapped in, you know, and I just really appreciate it. But during this phase, some things I just want to leave off with really quickly so everybody can kind of jump in, is accountability groups or accountability teams. Get with somebody that you feel like you can count on, someone that has the same, maybe moving in the same direction, maybe you have similar goals or at least can share goals, and meet up with maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks and say, okay, you said you wanted this, but did you do it? You know, not necessarily in a mean way, but just showing people that there's a lot of things we say we want. And if week after week, that person's not doing that thing, start to ask, is that really what you want? Or is it an illusion? Is it something you think you want that really belongs to someone else? I think Pisces really asks us to look beyond the illusions, because America says you can have whatever you want. I mean, you even see that in New Agey circles, be whatever you want, just do whatever you want. But sometimes we're tapped into someone else's medicine because we saw it, and we're not really tapped into the trueness of what our true path is or what our medicine is. And so I think that's one of the ways to see beyond the illusion, is to say, you know what, I keep saying this thing, but I don't do it. Do I really want it? And then there's some things we can't seem to accomplish that we really do want. The accountability will help there as well. You know, so it will act as a filter, because you can get lost in Neptune. You can get lost in this Jupiter Neptune stuff. You're just swimming and swimming and swimming. We need people as a reference point. You know, we need people as a reference point. So, and then the other thing is, I also think Neptune and Jupiter came together to say, look, if you have a gift, don't be afraid to ask for what you're worth. Okay? The time of the poor righteous teacher, it doesn't have to be, okay? Because we need righteous temples popping up. You know, people need opportunities. People need food. People need gas to get to the mountains to do the herb walk. People need, you know what I mean? You know, the poor righteous teacher, that archetype, I don't feel like it has to be something we stand on and say, yeah, we're poor, we're righteous. You know, no, if you have a gift and someone has the resource to share it, say, yo, I'm worth this much, and stand on that. Jupiter's about expansion and being real about, you know, mundane growth, you know, because we do need things. And I think that also brings an appreciation for Earth. You know, we do need the minerals. We do need the flowers. We do need all these things that are popping up. Oh, someone said, can you speak a little bit more on plant medicines for this time? You mentioned burdock. Yeah, some of the main things I definitely wanted to focus on was circulatory stimulants, because one of the things that's popping up around this time is a lot of congestion, clogged arteries, you know, toxins in the blood, you know, things show, and a lot of that will show up in the skin, you know, it'll show up in the skin and things like that. So definitely alternatives. You know, once again, I did bring up burdock, but I'd also bring in nettles. A lot of people know about nettles. That's also going to be a cleanser, but also a high mineral plant as well. You know, I'm also looking at things that are kind of warming, like things like ginger as well. All right, so just keeping ginger, onion, which regulates heat, you know, and keeping a steady flow of all these things, but including the water. I'm very much recommending that folks get away from capsules as much as possible. We're in the water season. Tea. Let's go with the tea, and stay there and drink a lot of it. Okay, and if anyone's dealing with anything in particular, feel free to hit me up, and I can give you a long list of herbs and things I'll recommend for this season. I don't want to take up all the time, but thank you for letting me talk. Ramon, love you guys. Renee, everybody, Jaguar Woman, everybody. Thank you so much.
I would like to also include on the chart that when I stopped talking, I was bringing in this sextile that's also perfecting today between the Sun and Saturn is in Aquarius. And I began orienting with the age of Pisces, and we are moving into the age of Aquarius. So the precession of the equinoxes takes us backwards through the zodiac. And in this transitional time that some folks are saying began with the solstice 2020, with Jupiter and Saturn's conjunction in Aquarius, that this is the first kind of step into the age of Aquarius. This feeling that was emerging in my body of being warriors of love, like having the solar, Saturnian, Martian drive move through our flesh to really take action, to move out of an age of many things, including spiritual delusion, but also including movements that are bringing us together as people, whether it's through technology and the channels of technology, or through the ways that we share information together. There is a movement of peoples into our messy, complex, interdimensional relationships that, for me, feels like what the age of Aquarius is inviting in, which is coming together and navigating the schematics or the mechanisms of how do we interact, how do we work together from our very different locations. So I wanted to bring that in, and then I also wanted to honor and give a nod to the the co-presence of Venus, Neptune, and Jupiter in Pisces. In the 11th house for the chart that we're working with, which is the Colorado chart. And the moon today, we began with the moon in Leo. By 9 a.m., the moon will ingress Virgo. And as has been mentioned, over the next couple of days, we're moving towards the full moon in Libra. And this full moon will square Pluto in Capricorn. But over these next 48 hours or so, as the moon transits Virgo, again, I want to bring in this 5th, 11th house axis of pleasure in community and pleasure in connection, and working with our internal subtle frequencies and vibrations to open up to love, and to feel that this is also the collective container, I think, that will hold us in our future imaginings and in the ways that we can reimagine where we're going. And so I just, I'll end there, but I saw Misty Dawn's comment. What are the main markers and placements of this age of Aquarius? So Misty Dawn, there may be other takes on this from Ramon, Monticue, or Kadie, or other folks. But the ages are about 3,000 years. Astrologers differ on their interpretations of when they begin and end. The conjunction of the chronocraters, Saturn and Jupiter, which happen every 20 years, happened in the end of 2020 on the December solstice in the sign of Aquarius at 0 degrees. And this is the beginning of the 200-year cycle of the Jupiter Saturn conjunctions in the air element. And so that's how I'm orienting with this transition into the age of Aquarius. Next year, Pluto will begin its ingress into Aquarius. And then we'll have over a decade of Pluto's transformational force working through the sign of the water bearer. And yesterday in the presentation on water rights, we learned that the name, and Ramon, will you say it? Because I'm forgetting the...
Yeah, the acequia.
The acequia. These indigenous native knowing of how to work with water as communal resource, as shared resource, that the translation is the water bearer, the water holder.
I also wanted to jump in real quick, Renee, and add to what you were saying about Aquarius, just to mention that in the modern scientific era, Neptune was discovered in 1846, I believe, in Aquarius. So I just think that's an interesting thing to add to it.
Now you're gonna get me tripping. Now y'all are talking about the ages and whatnot. I mean, I feel like, okay, a couple of things. One, I think we have done a lot of talk about the dawning of the age of Aquarius, and we should, but I think we also need to talk about the dusking of the age of Pisces. And how do we actually learn that, close the karmic loop and learn the lessons of the age of Pisces? Because the age of Pisces is supposed to set us up to really be capable of doing the work of the age of Aquarius. The age of Pisces is supposed to help humanity gather as in one heart, right? Because there's one side of that, which is the one God, which we all know has become a tyranny. But there's another side of it, which is all the waters of all the spirit waters that human beings carry flowing into one place. And the ocean is one thing, but it's also it's a cosmos of diversity. And it's those simultaneously. You know, another thing I think this conjunction really points us to, if you look at the Capricorn point, and okay, Capricorn is partly about how we work with resources on a collective level, how we manage resources collectively. And the United States Pluto is in that place. And so we have this desire as a society to control resources covertly, okay? And we did that by Renee talked about the hierarchy of pigment. We did that by displacing indigenous peoples. And one way that we can heal that, honestly, I think the closing work of the age of Pisces is the work of reparations. It's the work of saying, we took this, let's give it back. It's the work of saying, I'm sorry. I feel like if there's anything we need to do in this last 100, 200 years of the age of Pisces, we need to tell each other all over the planet, I'm sorry. Straight people need to tell queer people, I'm sorry. We persecuted you all for ages, I'm sorry. Men need to tell women, I'm sorry. Wealthy people need to tell broke people, I'm sorry. Wow, we took a lot from y'all. Wow, we squashed labor out of generations of human beings. You know, humans need to tell forests, I'm sorry. Wow, we sure did rip up a lot of trees to build our cities. And that's got to happen materially because it's Capricorn. But before we can even get to that place, there's so much softening, so much liquefying, so much healing of the emotional world, so much healing of the collective trauma. We can't even approach the discussion about resources, and we won't know how to envision it correctly until we do this work around this softening and the multi-generational, transgenerational healing, which Pisces is calling for. You know, so Renee kind of put out this picture that as these outer planets get into air signs, or as they move into Aquarius, okay, that those are just bells that are going to empower the age of Aquarius and get us deeper and deeper into that age. And I think as Pluto closes its loop through the zodiac and it moves through Aquarius and it starts to empower Aquarius and then finally kind of closes through Pisces, and we're talking about the end of our lifespan. I think at that point, we can complete the work of the age of Pisces. So in this decade, through this conjunction as a starting point, we have an opportunity to do the work of reparations, particularly on the emotional, somatic, and healing levels. And it's not going to just happen. A sextile doesn't just happen. You got to put it to work. And we also have Aries in the sun, so we have to be empowered individuals, and we got a conjunction of Mercury, and we have to use our voices to do this work. Anyway, y'all, I'm all in hot, and I should probably chill out. And it's 8:33, so I do want to recognize that we are at our official time, and give those folks that need to go an opportunity to go. And then if Astrology Gang, if folks want to stay on for another 5-10 minutes, we can do that. And if people want to have a larger conversation for a few other minutes. So I'm going to invite us as a point of closure. At Naropa, oftentimes we bow to open and close a lot of our meetings and classes. So I'm going to invite us into a bow. For those of you who are interested in joining more of the Dreaming for Our Lives Festival, we have a couple of online events tonight to around 3 p.m. So I put the link in the chat there, but yeah, let's take our bow. So find a nice upright posture. Leading with our hearts. Heads raised like a crown. We'll bow together. Thank you all. Wishing you well. Drink water, be near water in these coming days. We'll see you.
Hey, Ramon, I was just gonna, oh, yeah, I was trying to give you the church finger, but it's all good. Yeah, I was just adding on to what you said and what Monticue said and what Renee said. Just this idea of like
how do we want to catch the water? How can the water carve the space that we're looking to create? And you were talking about reparations, and you were talking about getting the emotional body ready. And so I'm always thinking about like, but what does that look like? And like how in our day-to-day, because Jupiter is an intermediary, is that true? The Jupiter has that soft spot of like, it's not a personal planet, like it's not a personal planet, but it's also not as slow moving as the outer planets. And so I'm thinking about sitting in the eye of the storm. It feels like the eye of the storm, and that it is this calm space in the middle. And so, what daily practices can we tap into that allow us as an invitation to enter that storm? Because when we were tapping into our water bodies, I wanted to read a story because I think my body was having a sense of this was going to look like that. But what are those practices that offer a hand to be held in these flooding times? Like, I'm in spaces like this, I feel like frequently, and I feel like I'm always the person on the call, like, yo, this is hard. It is hard to pick up weeds. It is hard to transform, because when I'm thinking about specifically Christianity, I'm thinking about the fact that that is sometimes your only community. I'm thinking about the fact that to be exiled is a difficult sensation to hold. I'm thinking about harm reduction, and I'm thinking about a good friend of mine who told me that if you are seeking substance, you're seeking relief. Like that is a way to get, that is some folks' avenue to healing. And so how are we, or how am I in my day-to-day speaking to all the ways that we are catching this water? And also leaving space for water not to be caught, because I know that there is no such thing as excess. Like the excess is, it has somewhere to go. Like Michelle said yesterday, like there's always more than enough. We just have to restructure it. But then I'm also thinking about Jupiter and the fact that like it's gonna honor what excellence you bring to it. It's gonna honor your excesses. And so it's like, what do I want to grow? And what do I not have any control over what grows? And so how am I creating these lanes, these pathways, these avenues, so that the water that comes through me flows into the pots that I am actively trying to fill? And then as I'm filling those pots, I know that some pots are also going to turn over. And what am I doing to acknowledge that, like, that water not there no more? Because the bearing of the water and the catching of the water require different types of support. To bear water through birth is very similar to death, but it is different. And so what practices allow me to touch that tangible difference enough to be with them actively versus feeling like they're the same and almost being passive about them. If that makes sense. So like, if I could offer a question like, what water do you want to catch? What water do you feel comfortable holding? What water do you feel like, when I'm thinking about water, I'm thinking about stories, I'm thinking about songs, I'm also thinking about communities and relationships. What do you feel like you can hold? And what you feel like you can't hold? Or where do you feel like you need a branch or a bridge to help you in holding that? And also, what's not yours to hold? Because I know it's a whole statement. And I do feel like when I've created my nose, I've been, like Monticue was saying, do you really want that? When I've created my nose, I've been able to really get clear, like, okay, but then that's just not mine. And I can let that dissolve, and that's okay. And that can be hard, and that can be like really difficult, because I see the way that sometimes those stories are like rooted, like, oh my God, that's a big part of my identity. That's a central core of my body. And I'm losing that center now. What does that feel like?
Really bringing in the earth element as the moon moves into Virgo and the daily practices.
Yes, I've been wanting people, y'all already know, astrology can get ethereal as fuck. Like, we be like, oh my God, the cosmos.
So yeah, I want everybody to feel supported, especially in these times.
Well, Kadie, I feel that you've brought one practice to us, which is just like singing. You know, just singing your grief, singing your sorrow, singing your heart, and Kadie shared this really. I know some of y'all who are tuned into embodied astrology might already know, but shared this really beautiful practice with us, which isn't new, right? Right? It's an old thing, which is people singing together, but it's not something that we do very often. And it's not something that we do, especially, speaking about like the exile from church. There's a lot of spaces where that just doesn't happen anymore. So I don't know. I wonder about things like, I mean, first of all, you got your car, you got a car, you got a shower sometimes. If you can have a walk to somewhere private, you can do some of that singing. But I mean, what about this? What about just like getting with 3 or 4 other people and just trying to sing? Finding one or two old songs, getting with 2 or 3 other people that you trust. Maybe you close your eyes first, you know what I mean? And just try singing, you know? And I think sometimes I imagine like sometimes, especially in the 2011 to 2016 period, I was going to a lot of demonstrations and mass, and it's like, man, what if we were all walking down the street and instead of chanting, what if we were all singing? What if we walked down these streets and we sang? It wouldn't matter if you were enemies with this cause or that cause or not. Do you know what I mean? Like, we need people walking down the streets in groups singing. You know what I mean? Christmas caroling seems kind of corny, but like, you might want to bring some of that back, knock on people's doors, sing to them. I don't know. What do y'all think? What are some, we talked a lot. What do other folks think? What are some practices that you all work with?
Well, there's this practice called womb steaming. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
But
can.
it's hard not to, it's my main work, but so I'm just always talking about it, but it's hard for it not to come up in my heart with the holding of the water. It's the bowl of water that you put herbs and salt into and then embrace into your body. And it just, often when you squat over the bowl, your throat opens and whether you'll sing or just be like, ah, like something comes out of your mouth. So I learned so much today with y'all in this workshop. Thank you. And it's just coming back to my heart. It's like you understand more deeply what the practice has been doing for you, It's like I wasn't even understanding all the layers of what it was doing for me. And when you were talking about, I never thought about the astrology of within a womb steam practice or within a bath and within the herbs that I'm putting into the bath and then putting my body like into that white moon bathtub full of water with the plants and the salt. I don't have a complete thought with that, but that's what was coming up in my heart as you were sharing everything. I pull it back into this womb steam practice. And so just feeling the connectivity of like the herbs and the plants and Mother Earth, and then this bowl that contains this water and how the yarrow will like pull from you. It pulls like the grief, it like will release the plants, they'll pull it up in your heart and like release it out of your eyes and like open your throat and like song comes out and tears come out. And then you take that bowl, because at the end of the steam, you're going to take the bowl with the herbs and you pour it back into the earth. So a bit like a purge energy where you like give it back. You go through the ritual and then return it back to the mother. It's just really saved my life a lot. And then I feel like in this workshop just now, I got like a deeper understanding. Sorry, my video isn't on because it's I'm in my jammies, but thank you. I don't know if that made sense.
Plenty.
I also wrote this in the chat, but vocal tuning has been something that's like just brought so much to like my life. Like when I'm just by myself, I have like a little drum in my room and a little, I have different types of drums, and like sound healing is something that just like saves my entire life. But just like playing the drums and just like allowing whatever needs to come up. And I'm in an Afro vocal collective here, and we hold sessions together where we just get together in a room, and a friend of mine plays sound bowls, and they will just start the sound bowls and we just start humming, we start singing, people start cackling, people are laughing, like we have waters, we have teas, and we give ourselves this space. If you're in London, then yeah, come through. sorry it's a hop, skip and a jump, but you're very welcome to come through. But yeah, we just sing together. And when you were talking about like the womb, and with the herbs, like I also think a lot about being in relationship with herbs, and the seeds that have been carried, the memory that is carried in seeds as well as water that like replenishes them, that plants them, and all of these things around like evolution, which is also just like the many ways our ancestors just kept striving, kept going, like the archive that exists in all of our pain, in all of our grief, in all of the cracks, in all of the spills, and to be with that, like to honor that, and to be in a space of like being witnessed to and being able to witness. I also want to thank Kadie as well. Like, thank you so much for coming in here with what was on your heart and speaking that and sharing that and flowing in that. I think that that's also like really profound healing. But I would say vocal tuning, just sit together, start humming, start singing, literally just see what happens. Like I've done the weirdest shit and it's been so like for my soul.
So dope. I think several of us are like, wait, where are you at? England. What do we got to do there? Wow. Oh, we got Scandinavia in the house. Oh, sad. Practice called. Oh, I'm not going to even try to say that. Well, for me, y'all, I'm watching the sun move. And we got from the Naropa point of view, the rest of this ceremony to close. But yeah, I really want to just encourage all of us to be near water. We're going to get into the creek or close to the creek today, facing the incoming waters and the outrushing waters, your past, your future. You know, every time we take a sip of water today, let's hold that in the spirit of ritual, you know? And even as people pop off, to stay linked in our hearts and our minds and our souls, and be holding this energy around the world, really, in simultaneity with one another. I want to thank Renee, Embodied Astrology, for hosting this and for inspiring this. And I don't know, it's kind of like a bar thing. I don't know if everybody has to go, but I gotta go. So peace, y'all.
Drop
Power.
the link in the chat for the other events today. And I believe that at least one of them is on Zoom. Is that right, Renee?
Yeah, I think it's from 3 to 4:30 p.m. Mountain Time. We've got a beautiful filmmaker who's Afrofuturist priestess filmmaker, who's going to be showing 2 of her films if folks are interested.
For anyone in the Denver Boulder area, come through. We've got Ramon and Regina leading a session on retrocausality, and then Monticue closing tonight with the water ceremony.
Thank y'all.
Blessings, everyone.
Peace.